Hello viewers, today I'm going to talk about Griever's eyes in Final Fantasy VIII. One particular thing that many of us see in regard to Ultimecia, I think that no one can really deny and really not notice, are her yellow eyes. Many people have thought that her yellow eyes are a very stunning trait in regard to her as a character, and I would have to say that this can be seen not only in regard to her, but in regard to Edea and Griever. This has a good deal of significance for many of us who have the belief that Griever was basically already in Ultimecia before she summoned Griever in the final battle, or at least the first phase. Not only in regard to sort of the magic animation being the same as our characters who have to use a guardian force for magic. Anyone basically, Edea has the same cast animation. So does Fujin and Raijin. Cypher's cast animation is a little bit different, but basically anyone trained at the garden basically is, they've been trained to use guardian forces. So anyone who has a guardian force and is human, that you draw from, for example, Fujin. If you draw from Fujin, you can get the Guardian Force Pandemona, I believe. And she has that same cast animation. Many of us have thought that it was quite strange the way Ultimecia had summoned Griever so naturally. I do plan to review that footage at some point. I don't really have it on this computer right now. I do like to download those videos first. That will be another subject I'll have to discuss. But basically, many of us thought that the way Ultimecia summoned Griever, which many people apparently say, she must have drew this from Squall, or at least took it from his mind. But the weird thing about that explanation was that there was no visual cue for that. There was no type of visual, representation of Ultimecia drawing Griever from Squall at any time. Now, we do have, a particular, part in the third phase of the battle where the top part of Ultimecia, the magic generator that she creates, has to draw from her body that is hanging down, which I have talked about before in my Final Fantasy VIII Remake video in regard to small details that many people do not really notice. But basically the third phase of that battle, this thing that Ultimecia has made that has basically the eye kind of looks like a cyclops, or whatever. It's type of a machine type component on her body, and her real body's hanging down. That part of her body has to draw from Ultimecia's body the Apocalypse spell before she uses it. In regard to Griever, she does not draw Griever from Squall, and you would think, well, if she is drawing Griever from Squall, and Griever is already in Squall, even though Squall had corrected Rinoa about the nature of Griever. Rinoa came up to Squall and they were talking about the ring that she had got Zell to get so she could make a copy of it, I believe. Or he was making a copy of it, or sort of finding some way to do that. So essentially you have two rings, which is already very interesting, because you could say in that case, well, are there two Grievers, like an idea of Griever, and as well as another Griever on the other ring that's a Guardian Force, who knows? But I mean, the nature of Guardian Forces are very interesting. And I have talked about that a good deal, but I would have to say, in regard to Griever's eyes, they are very interesting. Let us take a look at some of the implications of basically just eyes in the narrative. So we have here, from the Dictionary of Symbolism by Hans Biedermann, the most important organ of the senses, always associated symbolically with light and intellectual perspicacity. At the same time, the eye has long been considered not only receptive organ, but also a transmitter of beams. The image of spiritual expressivity. In other words, the eyes are, considered symbolically to be a light in themselves. Not only that, this is sort of, your eyes in a sense, show an expression of sort of your own, your essence in a sense, is expressed through your eyes in a symbolic way. So we have here from the King James Bible, Matthew 6:22-24. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light, but if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Very interesting. The idea of the light in the eye, the eye being a light, a type of light that sort of, in a sense, expresses who you are. This is the theme we're getting here. And apparently you can have evil eyes, you can have good eyes, There are also some very interesting symbolism behind the eye being single, but right now we're trying to gain a sort of sense of the symbol of the eye in a very, rudimentary fashion. What does it really mean? Apparently this is supposed to represent your essence. Also, try not to skip over words that most people do not know, and oftentimes I forget. What am I doing here? I'm trying to access the internet, but I have it cut off right now. Let me look up this word really quickly. Perspicacity, because this is something, perspicacious. This is a word that I often do not use, so I try to always have words explained so the viewers can have a sense of it. Acuity, acumen, acuteness, a perception, astuteness, clear sight. All right. Skill in perceiving, discriminating, or judging. Okay. Very simple. We have here from the Dictionary of Symbolism, again, in modern psychology, the eye functions symbolically as the organ of light in consciousness, for it permits us to perceive the world and thus makes it real for us. Very interesting. The eye, in its sense, is supposed to be a type of reality in itself, an expression of the person's individual and personal essence. This may seem to be, oh goodness, is that on? In terms of, I guess there's no sound to this video, which is good, because I thought that if the sound was on, that would be terrible for us. That would probably ruin this video. Anyhow, basically, the eye is basically an expression of who you are, a type of light in yourself. You could even say it represents the soul to an extent. Now, us going over this very basic symbolic information is important for us so that we can kind of understand what is the significance in yellow eyes in the story of Final Fantasy VIII from a narrative perspective. For those of you who do not know, the narrative of Final Fantasy had at least about 3 writers. We know that they had, 3 I do not know if there were other people contributing to the story, but what Yoshinori Kitase says, they had 3 writers. So basically we can say we have the expertise of 3 people. So in regard to writing, that brings a great deal of symbolic acumen, expertise, all types of historical and narrative information that you can basically utilize to make your story very enriched and give your story a great deal of meaning. And I do believe that is present in the Final Fantasy VIII narrative. Now, people argue over, to the extent that it is a symbolic story, but I think no one can deny that the story certainly has symbolism. Now, for many people, it may seem unnecessary to review, but, for our discussion, and this discussion is one I've been having for a long time regarding Ultimecia, Rinoa, the belief of many people, including myself, that Rinoa is, or rather becomes Ultimecia in the future, and that this is being hinted at in very, subtle ways, but is not outright being told to us, the player. But there are a great deal of, parallels and indications that Rinoa and Ultimecia are the same person. Are we really going to talk about that much in this video? Not now. Right now I want to focus solely upon the eyes in this video for the most part. But for those of you viewers who are new to my channel and to these videos about Rinoa and Ultimecia, maybe if you do not have the latest news, you might be saying, well, Yoshinori Kitase said that Rinoa was not Ultimecia. Yoshinori Kitase retracted his statement about, 5 or 6 years ago during an interview regarding Dissidia NT. He was asked a question. He said they had 3 writers. He could not possibly know the full context of the story because he was just one part of that. And he says that he simply does not know if Rinoa is Ultimecia, and he just simply said it. He said he retracted his statement completely. I always say this for those of you who are new to these videos, and this will help you from coming into my forum and saying something disrespectful or just stupid. Some people get really passionate about it. And I personally do not understand why people get so angry about this subject, but people do. And so I've had some people who, they get in a little rage because I said that Rinoa, I say that, our belief in this has not been disproven. But I just want to give you the latest news from Yoshinori Kitase. As far as Nojima is no longer responding to questions on Twitter. I do not know if it was the Japanese audience or the American audience, but he was asked so many questions and people started to harass him to a degree that, Nojima no longer really talks too much. He tries to, basically stay silent on a lot of story content now. He really does not want to talk too much about the old games. And he basically stated this on Twitter, so no one knows what he's saying about what, Kitase said. I really think that he just wants to keep out of it and just let people really enjoy the games how they want. But basically, from the perspective of those of us who do have this belief, looking at the eyes, I think, is very important. So let us continue our little investigation, so to speak. Now, there's an old saying. Many of you have probably heard it. And the saying is, the eyes are the windows to the soul. The idea is that you can look at a person's eyes and you can know something about them. And I think many people believe that. The yellow eyes, from what I have seen, in my opinion, represent Griever's symbolic influence in the narrative. And the reason I say this is because we see the eyes so often. For those of you who do not know, Greiver has yellow eyes, and if you do not know, lions have yellow eyes. Most cats often have yellow eyes. Even cats that are not lions have yellow eyes. And obviously Griever, although he is a black lion, he is still a lion. And lions commonly have yellow eyes. So we have two particular OST tracks in Final Fantasy that are quite significant in regard to what their titles mean. Eyes on Me having to do with Julia, having to do with Laguna lore, basically looking at Julia, as she's performing, is a romantic type song. And then we have another song that you could associate with what Rinoa says in the story, which Rinoa says, maybe I can become like a lion too. I would say, from my personal opinion, in perspective of basically playing this game multiple times, that Eyes on Me, obviously we know Eyes on Me was sung by Julia. We know why she sung it. We know that she sung it because this was sort of a song that was a tribute to Laguna, who used to come and watch her. Now we also have Maybe I'm a Lion. And to us, many of us would say, well, Maybe I'm a Lion is because Griever and, Ultimecia is becoming like, basically Johnsoning her body to Griever. But that is not the only reference we have to becoming like a lion, to, basically saying, maybe I'm a lion. During the conversation, the only conversation that we have in the game about Griever, the scan data does not count in regard to into script. Regarding script and what the characters say, Griever is talked about only one time between Squall and Rinoa. They are the only two characters that are known to basically know anything about him in regard to script. Alright? Ultimecia somehow summons Griever, and the question, there's mystery regarding that. There's mystery regarding that whole experience. But right now, let us take a look at the reference to Griever and the song Maybe I'm a Lion in the Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack. So basically, after Griever sets his name for the ring, the default is Griever. Griever means to grieve. A person who grieves. I would have to say that, and I have talked about it before, I think the grief is about romance of some sort, and I think that Ultimecia is somewhat connected to that theme as well, but I think that, basically you could connect that to the hard life that Squall lived, not knowing his father, and living in an orphanage, and basically, being an antisocial person in his own griefs and so forth. But I think it has a larger meaning personally, which I may talk about. I have talked about in other videos. You can watch those if you want to. So anyhow, Rinoa says, so that's what you call it. Zell said he'll make me one exactly like it. Who knows? Maybe I can become like a lion too. That'd be crazy, huh? I mean, everyone might, get the wrong idea about us. Okay, this comes from a whole discussion that Squall and Rinoa have, and it has to center around Griever and the ring that Squall has and this little lion motif that he basically carries, And so he has to correct Rinoa when Rinoa says, oh, what's that cool monster? And basically Squall says, it's a lion. And Rinoa has to, basically Rinoa says this, when you name the ring yourself. You get to pick the name just like any other Guardian Force. But Squall does not call it a Guardian Force. He does not say this is a Guardian Force. He is very clear that Griever is a lion. And that has... that whole discussion, there's so much to read into it. But basically, we have Maybe I'm a Lion, Final Fantasy VIII track. Now, this was not said by Ultimecia, this was said by Rinoa. And that is a thing of interest. Now, let us talk about the fact that Ultimecia has yellow eyes. When Edea is possessed by Ultimecia, she has yellow eyes. Yellow eyes are the most prevalent cat eye. Lions have yellow eyes. Edea's real eyes, like her normal eyes, Edea's normal eyes are green. you can sort of see a green tinge, but they're not like Edea's eyes when she's in a normal appearance. So her eyes certainly did change. Edea has a great deal of symbolism here that we can talk about here regarding the horns, the shell. Shells are symbolically associated with the moon. I plan to talk more about that at some point, but let's just look at the eyes. The eyes are here yellowish, but they have a greenish tinge to them, but they still are yellow. I mean, they're yellow just like Ultimecia's eyes are yellow. These are Edea's normal eyes. Edea's normal eyes are just green. You cannot really see them so well in that picture. I think that's a screenshot from the what would it be called? The original Final Fantasy VIII game for the PS1. So it's not as big as most images from the new remastered version. But we obviously know Ultimecia's eyes are always depicted as yellow. Which is very strange because humans do not naturally have eyes that have this really yellow color to them. I mean, sure, you can have hazel eyes, but eyes often don't look yellow like this. So the conclusion was basically yellow eyes, they're significant to Final Fantasy VIII narrative. Yellow eyes, they're associated with felines, with cats, with lions, and also therefore Griever who has yellow eyes. I mean, lions, that's yellow eyes or lion eyes. I mean, they're associated with lions. There's a song in the game, maybe I'm a lion. When Ultimecia junctions to Griever, she is essentially lion-like, and it really does make the foreshadowing of Rinoa. It makes it substantive in regard to a narrative thing that you can look at. You can play the game again and you can see, wow. I mean, what did Rinoa say? She said, maybe I can become like a lion. There's a song in the game that says, maybe I'm a lion. Very interesting. That's good writing. That's foreshadowing. That's telling you something in a small way and basically hinting at something that's going to happen in the game. There's going to be a woman who becomes like a lion. And if you look at, Ultimecia's eyes, Rinoa's eyes, they're yellow like a lion. I think for many of us, that is sort of a hint in the game to show us that, Griever as a character is sort of under the surface of the narrative, and there's a subtext regarding the yellow eyes of the characters. There's a symbolic subtext regarding, the yellow eyes. The yellow eyes have purpose in the narrative for those of us who believe that Griever was already inside Ultimecia to begin with, and there was no real visual cue for her to draw, to literally draw, Griever from Squall. We never saw that. It would be interesting if we did see that. If that was the intention of the story, to provide basically a narrative in which, Ultimecia just takes Griever from Squall, but we never see any visual representation for that. However, we do see the yellow eyes in Ultimecia and Edea, the yellow eyes of Griever. We know that cats have yellow eyes, that lions have yellow eyes. I do plan to expound more upon the symbolism of a lion. Lions are often associated with the sun. Black cats are often associated with witches. Therefore, you have a combination of symbolism that is both solar as well as occult regarding the symbolism of a black cat. So you can see, I think you can sort of understand that the narrative has some very interesting influences, some very interesting writing choices and symbolic choices have been chosen for it. I would have to say that basically I think that Yellow Eyes and Griever, they're sort of they're sort of connected. They're symbolically connected. So, excuse me, I had to clear my throat a little bit. I'm gonna drink a little water. One moment, viewers. All right. But yes, for those of us who believe that Rinoa is Ultimecia, we would say that, the Yellow Eyes are not just in a story as sort of an aesthetic, stylistic purpose. I think, there's some more meaning to this than is often assumed, I think, personally. And regarding, the larger, discussion, I think this is one little thing that I think some of us sort of talk about and refer to and really are fascinated by. So this was a sort of self-contained video. And I have been trying to do that so that basically I can give, excuse me, a little bit of information out at a time. Discussions about symbolism can become awfully convoluted. Discussions about what writers intend, what their influences could be, they can become very complex. So I thought, let's just talk about the fact that these are, yellow eyes that are very, basically lion eyes, cat eyes, that Ultimecia has. What, you can be the judge of what the significance of that is. Personally, I think it is highly significant, and I often do talk about this when I get in discussions regarding, Ultimecia as a character in the larger esoteric narrative that many of us have found in Final Fantasy VIII of Rinoa being Ultimecia. This does not really have to do very much with, deeper issues, or rather deeper topics in the story, but I think it's just something we can see that is there. And regarding Rinoa, as you can see on the screen, having the Apocalypse spell, that's a whole nother thing to talk about. I have so much to talk about that, to be honest, it is hard for me to decide what exactly I should talk about regarding the Final Fantasy VIII story, at any given time, because I think I have so much information, and I could just, share it all. I've been replaying Final Fantasy VIII, the PS1 version, of course, because that is the one I like. That has no censorship. I have a particular ISO file that shows the red blood in the ending, like in the last part of Ultimecia's castle, or at least in her castle. There's an area with some blood in it, but they colored it green. That is the only censorship we basically have in the game. My ISO file that I use on my emulator corrects that bloodstain. There's a mod too for Final Fantasy VIII remastered version that does that too, but the problem with that is that when you're playing it, they still do have censorship. They have censorship with Siren. I really do not think anyone's going to correct that. In regard to, Rinoa's original outfit, that they censored, just a little bit. That's still going to be in the remastered version. I really do not think anyone's going to create a mod to correct those things. And I just despise censorship. It's a matter of principle for me. I think if I play the game, if I can play an uncensored game with no type of stylistic changes, I would like that. To me, that's the truest experience. So I may be doing videos, or rather, I do plan to do videos where, I kind of show some of my Final Fantasy footage and talk about the game and talk about different elements of it. But anyhow, viewers, this was just a small, a small discussion about symbolism. I am planning to do more like this in the future. May you be blessed, and farewell, viewers.